You don't know what's in this bag.
That's correct.
Is it possible to roll an 18 with whatever's in this bag?
I don't know.
Well, if you don't know, then it must be possible.
No, not necessarily.
Hello and welcome to Theology Unleashed. I'm Arjuna. This is the channel where Eastern theology meets Western skepticism. And in this video, we're going to be looking at Matt Dillahunty's views on the possibility of God's existence. Often theists will point out that God's existence is logically possible. Matt doesn't accept this and claims that simply establishing that it's not logically impossible for God to exist does not mean that it's logically possible. In this video, I'm going to show what's wrong with Matt Dillahunty's argument. Philosophers talk about three different kinds of possibility: physical possibility, logical possibility, and metaphysical possibility. Physical possibility, we all know, it's based on the laws of physics. Logical possibility simply means that something does not violate the laws of logic. A classic example of something which is logically impossible is a square triangle. Metaphysical possibility simply means that something is conceivable. But with regard to the argument that Matt Dillahunty makes, there's two senses of the word possible which we would look at. One of them relates to reality, and the other one relates to our state of knowledge. Since we don't have absolute knowledge, we're always talking about possibility as it relates to our state of knowledge. What we can assume is possible based on our current state of knowledge. This sense of the word means that to claim something is possible is actually an agnostic or neutral claim and bears no burden of proof beyond demonstrating that something is not known to be impossible. With that said, let's hear more of the argument from Matt Dillahunty and his co-host, Tracy Harris.
But this bag is big enough to hold 3 dice, which would roll an 18. So is it possible to roll an 18 with what's in this bag?
Well, I don't know what's in the bag, so I can't say that it's possible to roll an 18 with what's in the bag. What I could say is that if there were 3 dice in the bag, then it would be possible to roll an 18.
To me, what he's doing there is just playing word games. We can just as well say that it's possible there's 3 dice in the bag, in which case it would be possible to roll an 18. Or said another way, it's possible that it's possible to roll an 18. Or we could simplify that statement and simply say that it's possible that an 18 could be rolled with what's in that bag. Often we hear atheists talking about parsimony and Occam's razor, how we should look for the simplest possible explanation. But here we have an atheist complicating speech. I'm really not sure what he's achieving by complicating speech in this way.
Okay, so not knowing doesn't mean that it's possible.
Correct.
You'd have to know something that informed you to be able to justify the possibility, sort of like what you were describing with the sides to the die.
I also can't say it's impossible.
Here, again, they're mixing up the knowledge-based sense of the word possible with the reality sense of the word possible. When theists claim that it's logically possible that God exists, they're not claiming that it's actually the case that God exists. They're simply establishing that logic does not preclude God's existence.
And based on the fact that there could be 3 die in there, what they just did was label the possible, or label the impossible as possible.
Which is why there's a fallacy that is the argument from ignorance fallacy, which isn't about being stupid.
Okay.
It's about you don't know.
Right.
And because you can't, because somebody can't demonstrate that your claim is false, you go ahead and claim that it's true.
What Matt just pointed out there is, in fact, a logical fallacy. Perhaps there are some theists that make such a faulty argument, but to go after them would be to strawman theism. When serious philosophers claim that God's existence is logically possible, they're not claiming that because nobody can prove that God's existence is impossible, that God must exist. But there is one person who makes an argument that has this faulty structure, and I believe Matt Dillahunty is a fan of him. Here's Alvin Plantinga explaining the fault in one of Richard Dawkins' arguments. Perhaps you think Alvin Plantinga is misrepresenting Richard Dawkins' argument. If so, let me know down in the comments.
Here's the form of the main argument, i.e., the argument for the conclusion that evolution reveals a universe without design. The premise, then, is an argument that has a premise and a conclusion. The premise is we know of no irrefutable objections to its being biologically possible that all of life has come to be by way of unguided Darwinian processes. All right? We know of no irrefutable objections to its being biologically possible that all of life has come to be by way of unguided evolution. That's the premise. The conclusion is all of life has come to be by way of unguided Darwinian processes. As far as I can see, that's the only argument there is in that book for the conclusion that all of life has come to be by way of unguided Darwinian processes, or that the evidence of evolution reveals a universe without design.
So perhaps you think Alvin Plantinga is misrepresenting Richard Dawkins. Plantinga is a very serious philosopher, so I imagine if there was a better argument, he would have picked it out. But perhaps you've picked up on something that he hasn't. If so, let me know down in the comments. Assuming that that is Richard Dawkins' argument, I would hope that Matt Dillahunty would join me in finding Dawkins' argument to be logically fallacious. And just as bad as assuming that because nobody can show that God's existence is impossible, that God must exist.
But I didn't say it was true. I said it was possible.
Oh, well, sure. But you're claiming that it's true that it is possible.
I see.
Again, more word games. To go along with his word games, what we're doing is saying that it's possible that God exists. But since that's an unnecessary complication of speech, we simply say it's possible that God exists. And he's continuing to mix up the knowledge-based sense of the word possible with the reality-based sense of the word possible. And you'll remember that because we don't have absolute knowledge, we can't talk about the reality-based sense of the word possible. We can only talk about the knowledge-based sense of the word possible. The nitpicking of language he's doing here is pointless because we can always assume that we mean the word possible in the knowledge-based sense, because we can't mean it any other way because we don't have absolute knowledge.
Yeah, and I mean, possible may be less committal than believe or than know, but it is still a commitment to a position, and it still requires justification. And if someone's going to call something possible, they have to do better than show that you can't demonstrate it's impossible.
Yeah.
That's no different than saying it exists because you can't demonstrate it doesn't exist. It doesn't become possible just because Matt couldn't demonstrate that there weren't 3 dice in the bag, did not make it possible to roll the 18.
Despite what internet atheists might tell you, possible and impossible are in fact binary. Matt manages to get his trichotomy by mixing up 2 different senses of the word possible, the knowledge-based sense and the reality-based sense. To remove the ambiguity from his argument, what he does is argue that simply because we don't know something to be impossible here, using the word possible in the knowledge-based sense, does not mean that it is possible in the reality sense. But those are 2 different senses of the word possible, and mixing them up doesn't give us sound philosophy. Something is either possible or impossible according to our knowledge, and something is either in reality possible or impossible. They are, in fact, binary, provided you don't mix up your senses of the word. Everything is either a potato or not a potato. In the same way, everything is either possible or impossible, whether in the knowledge-based sense or in the reality-based sense. I want to welcome all the new subscribers. It's been a while since I've put together one of these short philosophical videos. I've been busy with debates and figuring out the technology for the live stream and so on. I'm enjoying putting out another one of these videos where I respond to different arguments and objections from atheists and skeptics. Let us know what you think down in the comments. Make sure to hit that like button, or if you feel like it, you can give us a dislike, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. We've got more debates, discussion, and hopefully I'll be finding time to put out more of these little response and argument videos in the near future. Hare Krishna.